What is up, sports geeks? It's your host, Josh, here back with another College Hoops episode, joined by Nick, as always, the college basketball guru. Nick, good to have you on. We were here this is being recorded Monday, right? We were just back on Friday talking about college hoops, and we're back with more. Last week's was a little bit delayed, but this week we're back to our typical Monday recording. And holy crap, Saturday was great. Great day of basketball. I mean, there was everything we wanted. I remember on Friday we were talking about this Kentucky Gonzaga game, and I think this is a perfect way to start. We were talking about how big this is for both teams, right? You're coming off of a loss for both teams, or I think Gonzaga had a win in between. Both you guys are looking for a bounce back game against big opponent, and it's out on the West Coast, right? Out in Spokane, and Kentucky goes in huge battle back win. I wanted to just get your initial thoughts on this game because this was spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about last week, going into this was a huge weekend for basketball. I mean, it was the start of conference play for some, but also we're getting a lot of really good non-conference games. And I mean, first glance, Kentucky, you looked, they were getting throttled at halftime. I mean, most people thought the game was over. Then you look what they do. Gonzaga got complacent. They thought that they could just easily run their offense and do what they do, get an easy win out of it. But you look at Kentucky starters. This is without Lamont Butler. All of them had double digits besides Kirk Kriisa, and he got hurt. So I mean, Kentucky battled back in the second half and showed that they are still a resilient team and can really do some damage come March.
Yeah, I think, and the big thing we were talking about with Kentucky too is they're so 3-point dependent. Can you win a game when you don't shoot the three well? And they just put up 90 points on Gonzaga while shooting 28% from three. That's exactly what we were looking to see from Mark Pope and his boys here, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to look and see with this team. I got to check and see. Kobe Bryant went 1 of 6 from deep. He got the shots like we talked about. He didn't make them, but he got them. And like you said, they shot 20%, 7 of 25. So where did they go? They went down low. Andrew Carr had 19. Williams had 12. Robinson had 18 on 2 of 5 shooting from deep. So he scored cutting to the lane, and that's exactly what they needed to do. They were
Yeah.
able to get down low with Gonzaga and bully them.
Yeah, no, they absolutely were, and I know we exchanged some texts on Saturday night about it. The thing that stands out to me is that I mean, Mark Pope lights a fire under their ass at halftime, right? You know he
Yep.
did. The way they
Oh
came out
yeah.
and played in the second half, holding Gonzaga to 29 points in the second half is spectacular work. This Gonzaga team scores points. They're a great offensive team, and Kentucky really isn't known to be a defensive team in the past. Certainly under Calipari, they weren't, right? But Mark Pope lit a fire under these boys' ass, and man, I mean, the way that they came out and played in that second half, if they can play a quarter of as good as that the rest of the season with that sort of intensity, that sort of, just overall, passion for defensive basketball, even if you're not hitting threes, which they're going to at some point too, we know that. Even
Yeah.
if you're not hitting threes, they're still going to be a Final Four team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it like we said, they were down 16 at half. They come out of half and go on like I want to say it was a 14-2 or 16-2 run, and they came out on fire. Mark Pope, like you said, lit a fire into their ass at half and reminded them like, look, this isn't how we play. This isn't the way we play. Why are we playing so timid? I get it. We're in Gonzaga's backyard. I mean, they're less than 5 hours away from home, but this isn't the way Kentucky plays basketball. This is a new brand of Kentucky basketball. If this was a Calipari team, they would have never came back. They would have just hoped to try to run up and down the floor and hope Gonzaga missed shots. They wouldn't have actually locked down on the defensive end, and that's what I think we're starting to see now with this new Kentucky team is they're not just going to try to outscore you. They're going to at least going to try to defend their asses off. And I mean, they still gave up 89 points in this game to Gonzaga, but I feel like the defensive pressure they put on one of the top teams offensively in the whole sport of college basketball is really impressive.
Yeah, and I think that, like, kind of my final point here about Kentucky is that you played absolutely excellent defense in the second half, and you weren't even forcing turnovers. Gonzaga take care of the ball very, very well. They
Yep.
always have under Mark Few, and they probably always will. I mean, Graham Ike is not somebody that is going to be in the post and turn the ball over. He's not
Yep.
somebody that's going to put up 4 turnovers out of the post because he's trying to make too many fancy passes. And then you have Ryan Nembhard, who is a spectacular facilitator, extremely smart. I'm looking at this here: 10 assists, 1 turnover. That's exactly what I
He's
would
got, I
expect
think
him.
on the year, he's got a 7-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, he's an extremely smart point guard. Somebody that, I mean, Mark Few is very fortunate to have. But no, I mean, this Kentucky team, you're not turning them over, and you're still playing great defense in the second half. You're not. It's not like you're jumping lanes, you're getting blocks. All you're doing is you're sitting down in a stance, and you're saying we aren't letting you score, and you're going to shoot
Yep.
some stupid contested fadeaway three at the end of the shot clock because that's all we're going to give you. So I mean, I was very, very impressed with this Kentucky team. I know we exchanged some texts about it a little bit on Saturday, but to me, I'm bought in.
Yeah, I think I'm bought in, but at the same time, I still have the worries. But I think that's every team.
Mhm.
I told you, I texted you on Saturday. Kentucky kind of showed me what Duke showed against them, where they couldn't close the game out. But I mean, I get it. You have your center shooting free throws. I give Andrew Carr all the credit in the world for not sulking and putting his head down, but instead getting back and getting the steal to win the game for him.
Mhm.
But I feel like that might be something they need to shore up a little bit. Like we talked about, they need to shore up the 3-point shooting. It's going to come back. They're not going to stay this cold. And honestly, it's better they stay cold now, and then once conference play starts, they ramp it back up. But like we said, their defense was insane. They held Gonzaga to 22% from three, and I mean, without Graham Ike, like we said in this game, who had a double double with 28 and 11, you're not finding much scoring except for Nemhard, who had 13, which he usually doesn't have, and then Battle, who had 13 as well. So I mean, you really had 3 or 4 guys for Gonzaga that kept them in the game. When I felt like for Kentucky, it was an all-around performance with multiple guys in double figures.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we talk about too. I mean, every March we end up talking about it, right? Of you can't have one guy, you can't have one guy. You have to have a plethora of scorers. That's what this Kentucky team has, and I think Gonzaga has it as well. They have the ability to have four guys put up 13 plus, right? You have the ability to do that. But and you also have Nemhard, who I think gives you a little bit more leeway because he can dish out 10 assists in a game.
Yep.
That makes everybody else. He makes everybody around him so much better. So no, I completely agree with you. They're not shooting well, but when come conference play time, they might be. And I do want to talk about conference play here because the SEC had a week, especially a weekend. So obviously you have Auburn beats Richmond, right? You're just avoiding an upset there. I
Yep.
mean, Texas loses to Yukon yesterday. Whatever, right? But I think that's very much outshadowed or overshadowed by Kansas losing to Missouri. This Missouri team, I believe, either 9 or 10-1 now. A one-loss team, only loss coming to Memphis. And this Missouri team, we were not accounting for them last week when we talked about how good this conference is. And now you have Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee, the new number one overall team in the nation, by the way,
Yep.
Auburn, Kentucky, Mississippi, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Missouri. 10 teams right there I just counted off. I did not say Vanderbilt, who's 9-1. I did not say Georgia, who's 8-1. I did not say Texas, who's 7-2. Like there are a lot of really good programs that I think the SEC has 16 teams in it. They could flirt with 12 or 13 teams getting in, depending on how conference play works out, right? Obviously, you're going to beat up on
Yeah.
each other a ton, but man, oh man, this conference is so good this year.
Yeah. I saw on Twitter earlier that as of today, the SEC is 123 and 18, I believe, so far to start the year, and that is ridiculous. That is insanely good. I think every team in the conference has at least a 5 or 6 win to loss gap. Like, that's unheard of.
Mhm.
Like, there's not a single team in the conference that's even flirting around 500. You just don't see that.
The
And
worst
like,
team the worst team is South Carolina at 6-3. Everybody else is 7-2 or better.
yeah, that's insane. That's insane to even think of. And I mean, if you look at South Carolina, we talked about them last time. They had like some of their losses are close. It's not like they're losing games by a lot. So I mean, they have a few games that there's a few possessions in those games that could completely flip, and they could be 8-1 themselves. And
Mhm.
you look at this conference; it is legitimately 12 to 13 deep, and it's going to be really interesting come conference time. If these teams start to fall off, or if they all stay consistent, and maybe they start eating themselves alive as a conference.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too that's interesting is they played, Georgia Tech, right? Or Virginia Tech. They played Virginia Tech and Boston College and beat them both.
Yeah.
And I mean, they beat Boston College, who's about middle of the pack ACC team by like 20. And
Mhm.
that's the worst team in the SEC.
Yeah.
So the SEC is, I mean, just spectacular this year. But I want to ask you about Tennessee because Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, three. I mean, and Bama. Those are the big Power Four here. All four of these teams are Final Four caliber potential teams, right? I want to. Tennessee's a new number one team in the nation. Do you think it's deservingly so or no?
I would say yes. I mean, you look back at their schedule, they've played some pretty good teams. I mean, they went to Louisville, and this was a healthy Louisville at the time. So we're not talking about the Louisville as of yesterday, where Duke struggled and only beat them by 11. They went to Louisville and beat them by 22. They played Virginia in the Bahamas and beat them by 22. They played Baylor and throttled them, beat them by 15, but they were up 15 plus the whole game. Even I
Mhm.
want to say at one point it got to like 25 or almost 30.
They were up
Um,
27 at I think they were up like
yeah,
let
they
me
were
check.
close to up 30 at half, I think.
Yeah, 27 at half. Yeah. So
I
they,
mean, then
they-
they play Syracuse, so they beat by 26. And tomorrow night in the Jimmy V Classic, they get to play Miami. And this isn't a great Miami team, but this is a Miami team that's got some pieces where they can still compete to be a half decent team. I mean,
yeah.
you look at them, and this is a Tennessee team too. That when you think of them, you think of Rick Barnes' teams. Defense, defense, defense. This team can score. I mean, they put
Mhm.
up 96. They've put up 80, they've put up 92, 103, 77, and 79. Like they're scoring in the high 70s, low 80s. I mean, that's not usual for a team like that. Usually you see Tennessee and they're maxing out at like 72 points and they're shutting the team they're playing down. So I've been really impressed with this Rick Barnes team.
Yeah, no, and you hit on one of my 2 points that I wanted to hit on. You hit on one of them. Rick Barnes' team here, they still have the defensive mentality of the typical Rick Barnes Tennessee team. That's nothing's changed there. Now they can score the lights out of the gym though. That's really dangerous when you pair those two things together. That's really dangerous for the rest of the SEC, for the rest of the nation. And the other thing I want to say is Zakai Ziegler. He is a spectacular point guard. He is
Yep.
so good. I remember watching him 2 years ago before he tore his ACL, and I was like, dude, this guy is he facilitates the ball. He's a true freshman at the time, I'm pretty sure. Facilitates the ball so well, commands the floor, knows where everybody has to be at all times as an 18-year-old. Now he's like 20, 21 years old. He's an experienced guard, which is what we say all the time. Come March, you need experienced guards.
Yep.
Zakai Ziegler is the type of guy that is such a difference maker when it comes to March. He could push you over the line of Final Four contender, title contender.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, you look at this team, they are another one of those teams where they have a lot of veterans. A
Mhm.
lot of veterans. I mean, they went out into the transfer portal and got two really good players in Lanier and Milicic Jr. And then you pair them with Ziegler, who's averaging 8 assists per game. I mean, it's fantastic. And once again, it's another team that has this veteran presence that knows what to do when the game might be on the line compared to a team like we've talked about and said in Duke, who can struggle at points with that. That is the number one team you want. You love to see that for Rick Barnes, and I think they're only going to get better and better and keep gelling as the season goes.
Yeah, I think that brings up the question too of like when it comes to coaches trying to build a team. At what point does the classic Duke, I mean, used to be Kentucky 8 years ago, right? When Calipari was there, of we're going to recruit the best 5 stars. They're going to be one and doneers, but we're going to get 5 stars. At what point would you rather not have that, but you'd rather have somebody like Kentucky, right? Where you're saying, look, I mean, obviously this year you brought in everybody new because it's a new coach. But like, hey, look, we're not going to we're going to recruit guys that fit our program. And if a 5 star fits our program, we're still going to pair him in there. But I want the guy that averaged 12 and 6 last year and is a fifth year because he's played 8 games in the NCAA tournament in his career, and he's not going to be phased when he's down 10 at half coming out of the tunnel, right? Like that
Yep.
sort of mentality, you can't coach it. You just have to experience it. And we talk about it every year. I think the transfer portal is changing the game so much because you're allowing teams to be so experienced, like this Kentucky, like this Tennessee team.
Yep.
It could be really dangerous if you pair them up against like a Duke. I mean, they could run them out of the gym, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and we look about it, like, especially within the SEC. Like, speaking of Calipari, you look what he's done with Arkansas. Yeah, they have all the money in the world down there, and they went and got all the people they wanted. But guess what? They're all first and second year guys. They're
Mhm.
not experienced guys. The only one who is a Tierra, and he's in his third year. There's not a lot of experience on a team like that. You can see it right now with Arkansas. They have no really good wins. Every big game they've had to play in, they've mostly got throttled. It hasn't been crazy close. And it's going to be a real problem for them. And I think it's going to continue to be a problem. And that's why you see all these high level programs dipping into the portal and willing to pay a third year, fourth year guy to, really come in and help change that program.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do think I would be it would be a crime if I didn't mention them today of my Michigan State Spartans. Up to number 21 in the AP poll.
Yep.
First time they're ranked, I think all year. I don't think they started in the ranked, but first time they're ranked all year. And holy crap! I mean, Wednesday they played at Minnesota. I mean, shot the crap out of the ball. They were lights out from three, and then they go in Saturday and they hang 89 on Nebraska, beat them by 37.
Yep.
And I mean, the second half, I remember I was watching this game with my dad, and it was 7 minutes into halftime or into the second half, and Nebraska had 5 points in the half. And this
Yeah.
is something that I've been telling my dad and my other Michigan State fans, right? And obviously we're primarily homers, right? So take this with a grain of salt. But like this Michigan State team plays defense at a level that I haven't seen them play defense at in a really long time. And I think that's something that's very unique to my hope with Michigan State this year. You also have some senior guard play, right? Frankie Fiddler comes from the portal. He's an older guy. Jaden Akins is an older guy. Trey Holloman's in his third year now. You're starting to get a little bit more of that experience aspect, and then you still pair it with the young guns. Jeremy Fears, DeCohen Card, that's a lethal duo. The alley-oop from sitting down.
Yep.
Let's not forget about that. I mean, I'm very, very excited for this Michigan State team. Curious to hear your unbiased opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at this roster, and I feel like this is another great example of another team that flew under the radar at the start of the year, like a Clemson, because nobody wanted to give them respect. I mean, you look at this team; they're coached by Tom Izzo, one of the greatest coaches to ever do it in the game of college basketball. You got to give this team a little bit of respect, and I know it's hard to do that because this team doesn't have the flashy 5 stars that
Yep.
you're seeing out of these blue blood programs. But I'm just looking at their box score here against Michigan State. They only had 3 guys in double digits. I mean, this is an all-around effort by Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
They beat them by 37, and they had 2 guys that were 16 or above in Richardson and Akins, and then Xavier Booker with 11. Nobody else was over 8 points. That is an all-around effort. I think that is a fantastic way to win, especially in blowout fashion. If everybody is getting the rock and scoring, and you're getting an actual team win, that makes that win feel so much better than if, let's say, Akins went off for 25 and you guys win by 37. That doesn't feel nearly as good because you had to rely on one person to get it done. But
Right.
Michigan State is slowly starting to get into that groove of where they're playing team basketball, but they're also playing an insane amount of defense on you. And I think that's what I love most is these young guards and Fears and Richardson, and they just play insane defense. They,
Yeah.
they lock you down, and I think that is going to be massive for the Spartans.
Yeah, I mean, Fears is a guy that he is not who you want to see on the other side of the court. As you have to bring the ball up for 40 minutes.
Yep.
He will hound you as a ball handler. He did it to DeJuan Harris in the
Mhm.
Kansas game, right? DeJuan Harris is in his 15th year playing college basketball,
Yep.
and he did it to him, right? So I am huge on Jeremy Fears. I also think Cohen Carr, Flight 55, if you will, he is somebody I coming in last year, right? He is probably the most athletic guy in college basketball, but he can't shoot the three at all. He really can't shoot a pull-up jumper. And it's like, okay, you're going to be useful, but we don't know how, right?
Mhm.
And last year we really struggled, couldn't even really handle the ball. And this year he's able to catch the ball, rip, and take a dribble to the rim and fly up for a layup, right? I mean, half the time he might dunk on you, but that's something that's really, really valuable. If you can rip and take 2 dribbles without dribbling off your foot and just elevate, nobody can elevate with you. You're shooting an uncontested layup at 11 feet off the ground. All you need to do is just be able to take 2 dribbles. So I'm really impressed with him too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his stats right now, he's averaging, 9 points on 63% shooting. That's extremely efficient, you're only averaging 9 points. I
And
mean,
leading the nation in dunks, I think.
he's only playing 21 minutes a game.
Mhm.
Like, that's fantastic. If he can continue to, like you said, drive to the hole and be aggressive and learn how to finish, I mean, if he can get to the if he his only problem right now is his foul line, he's shooting 50%. But if you
Mhm.
figure that out, you start to shoot the free throw a little bit better, and your confidence is only gonna skyrocket. So I feel like for him to really unlock his potential, maybe get that scoring up to, like, 12, 13, if he learns how to start driving to the hoop a little bit stronger, maybe finish a little bit more of those and get to the foul line and make his, free throws,
Mhm.
that's a whole 'nother level of untapped potential.
Yeah. Well, I think one other thing, final thing about Michigan State, and then we'll move on. And about Cohen Carr is if he can develop any sort of pull-up jumper, right?
Yeah,
Take one dribble and shoot a free throw line, a 15-footer, right? But if you elevate and shoot a 15-footer, especially if you are such a threat going to the rim, if you take one hard dribble and pull up, it's an uncontested jumper probably 95%
yep,
of the time, unless you do it 5 times in a row and then they might contest it on the sixth. But I mean, if you can develop that at all, which again, he's only a sophomore, right? I would expect the jump he made from last year to this year was great. I would expect from this year, next year, it'll be similar. So I think that's exciting to see. I do want to talk about this Duke team really quickly. Cooper Flag now, we've kind of seen he's paired 2 games in a row here of I mean, he fouled out right this past game, right?
yeah,
That's not great, right? Not a good look. But I like 0 turnovers. I like around 50% from the floor. That's something I like to see against a good Louisville team, right? This is a solid Louisville team. Obviously, I mean, they're 7 deep, right? They're
yeah.
not a spectacular Louisville team, but they're solid. They play good defense. And from an 18-year-old in Cooper Flag, that's what I need to see.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You look at it, like you said, he turns 18 this month, and he is really starting to string together some games, really get that confidence. Like you saw it against Louisville. He had a drive to the 10. He missed it, got it for a putback dunk, and hung on the rim one handed, and showing that swagger. He's really starting to show college basketball. Like, look, I'm here. I know you
Mhm.
guys only think I'm a 17-year-old, and I'm here a one and done. I don't really care. I'm just trying to put up stats. No, he's showing that he really cares, and I think that's big for not only his confidence, but the whole team's confidence that they know that he's starting to get the confidence enough to where he can be that takeover player and not have to worry about end of the game turnovers or stupid turnovers.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for Duke that the schedule that they played this year, right, to test themselves as much as they did, right? You're playing Arizona, you're playing Kentucky. Those games are so massive because what you get out of them is that experience. And if when we've talked about earlier here, right, is that you can't coach for situations like in March Madness where it's you're coming out of the tunnel down 10 to a 14 seed in the first round
Yep.
and they have nothing to lose and they're playing some super intense defense and the crowd's loving it because everybody wants you to lose. No, you can't coach for that, but what you can to start to develop is you can speed the process up of that experience. You can speed it up by putting them in situations like the Duke Kentucky game where Cooper Flag's gonna fail. He fails twice late in that game. 2 bad turnovers, you lose the game. Okay, guess what? You got to learn from it. Now you go play
Yep.
Louisville. You have 0 turnovers. You foul out. Okay, that's your next thing you got to fix, right? But you're moving along, and that's how you can speed this up a little bit. My final point about Duke here too is that if they are going to be a Final Four team, it is, I don't want to say all, but a very, very good chunk of this is on Tyrese Proctor's shoulders. Because what we talked about with Zakai Ziegler of you have to have an experienced guard that can slow the game down or he can speed the other team up. You have to be able to do both. They're trying to speed you up, you have to slow it down. You want to speed them up, you have to be successful. And Tyrese Proctor has the ability to. In Cooper Flag, Con Knappel, you have these younger players in here. You have to have lean on the expertise of Tyrese Proctor. And I think he's going to be, I mean, it's easy to say Cooper Flag's the most valuable player. I think Tyrese Proctor might be.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And like we've talked about it multiple times. Every time Duke has had a big game loss, we came back and talked about why is Cooper Flag getting the ball at the end or Conklin getting the ball at the end when you have, a 3-year guy in Tyrese Proctor who throughout that most of those games was your go-to scorer whenever you really needed a big time bucket. I mean, he
And it,
knocked down big time threes in those games and you get to the end of the game situations and you just don't give him the ball except for a little quick pass to Cooper Flag. And I feel like if they don't start to incorporate him more, especially when it starts to mean a little bit more when we get into, February, April, we get into March, like it could be a real problem for them, no matter how much Cooper Flight can impact a game.
right. And we're not saying that Tyrese Proctor needs to be taking your final shot all the time. But what
Yeah,
we are saying is that he needs to be involved, right? If you let Cooper Flag bring the ball up the court, who does the defense think is going to shoot this ball? Cooper
getting
Flag.
really one dimensional.
Right. If you have Tyrese Proctor bring the ball up the court, and you're running something for Con Knappel on the right wing, and you have Cooper Flag in a high post action on the left, now this defense has to react to everything. We don't know where the ball's going. Are you gonna send Proctor off a pick and roll? Or are you gonna have him dribble entry over to the left and throw it in a Cooper Flag in the high post? You're gonna do a dribble handoff to Con Knappel, let him attack. There's just a lot more ways in which it's not, hey, Cooper Flag's gonna bring the ball up the court and he's gonna play 1v1. I know that's what he's going to do at the next level. You're not trying to groom him into being an NBA player. You're trying to win basketball games right now. You don't care about his NBA status as a college coach. You care about winning games. And
Yep.
I think that's what I would just want to see out of Duke. Maybe we'll see it here. If we don't, though, I don't see him really touching the Final Four this year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'll give a closing thought. I agree. I mean, I really couldn't agree more. Like we've already seen it. They haven't tried to incorporate their best 4 players on the floor when it's really came down to crunch time, and it's hurt them. And like you said, it's not about getting him ready for the NBA. That's what the summer league, that's what offseason workouts, that's what all that's for. This is for now. You're Duke.
Mhm.
You're trying to get back to the relevancy of you're in the Final Four, Elite Eight every year. You're trying to get back to that because I mean it's been quite some time since they've been consistently making the Elite Eight and Final Four. And I
Mhm.
feel like with the weapons you have right now, you got to run a better offense. And if you figure out the offense, start running more sets, you're almost unbeatable.
Yeah, I think one thing for me, my closing point here for Duke is the impact that Con Knappel can have negatively on this team. I think his shot selection is something that I need to see something that's good from him because I look back at the games that they've struggled in. Right, I look back at the Kentucky game; he's 5 of 20 from the floor. Right, I look
Yep.
back at the Kansas game; he's 4 of 14 from the floor. I look at the Auburn game in which you win; you're 2 of 3 from the floor. I'm not saying you can only shoot the ball 3 times, but you can't be 5 of 20. You can't be
Yeah.
4 of 14. And if you break down deeper into those shots, they're not good shots, right? They're 12.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember watching the Kansas game, 12, 15
Mhm.
seconds on the shot clock, and you're taking a contested fadeaway jumper. We can
Yep.
get something better than that. You have very talented players on your team. Just pull the ball out and get it to some of them, and you're still going to get your good looks. Just don't force them. So I think Con Knappel is a very massive piece to this puzzle as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, like you said, those are 3 big games where he didn't show up, and if he did take his shots, they were stupid and ugly shots that a freshman would take, coming off of screens, trying to get up a 3 that's contested, trying to over dribble, power dribble, and then take a step back, fadeaway jumper. It's just that's another thing that he's gotta learn, especially if he wants to get to the next level, that's not the right shot.
Right, absolutely. Final thing here, as we start to round this out here, I want to touch on this upcoming Saturday because we have some absolute crazy good games here. Right, so you have Memphis Clemson here to start at 11 a.m. Check that out, 11 a.m.
Getting it
Eastern
early,
time.
getting it in early.
Yeah, you are, and that's great. I mean, Memphis. The one thing I've seen out of them is that when they played in the Maui, it was confusing to me because they hit a spectacular amount of contested shots, contested threes, and
Yep.
it was like, look how consistent they were hitting them, right? I mean, you hit them for nearly, I mean, for 2 straight games, right? Against Yukon and against Michigan State. And it's like, I mean, holy crap. Are you that good? Because you're not creating open shots, but
No.
you are consistently hitting contested shots right now. Is everybody just that good? There's NBA caliber, but we started to see him fall off since then, right? We started to saw it against Auburn, right? We saw, I mean, with a big upset against Arkansas State yesterday or 2 days ago.
It
So I
looked
think it's
terrible in that game.
yeah, they're starting to fall off, not fall off, but they're starting to kind of come down to planet Earth. Be
Yep,
interesting to see what this
which they
Clemson game
always
looks like.
do.
Yes.
That's the sad reality with Memphis. Like you said, are they really that good? Do they really consistently shoot that well? I hate to say it, I think it goes back to the Maui rims. I think it goes back to the fact that they did have a lot of, like, fadeaway threes, deep threes that were ridiculous shots, but those really soft rims, they got a good bounce and they went in. And I'm not saying that's the reason why that they were making these shots. I mean, Memphis is a good team. They're a good
Mhm.
team. They had a bad loss at home against Arkansas State. They never should have lost. But this Arkansas State team is led by a former assistant of, Alabama. I mean, this is a good team. They're picked to finish first in the Sun Belt.
Mhm.
Like, they're not a bad team. Do you lose to them at home? No, that's a really bad quad four loss. So if you're Memphis, you really got to hope that you can run the table in the American because if you're anywhere near that bubble, come Selection Sunday, you are going to be sweating.
Yeah, I mean, you have the win over UConn, right? You have the win over Michigan State. There's going to be massive games, but this is a really bad loss. But I want to touch on 2 other games here really quickly. One is the Creighton Bama because Creighton's in a really really weird spot right now, because
Yeah.
they're starting to fall, right?
Yep.
And you're 7-3 right now, and you're coming into this game. This is not a good spot for you, right? You beat Kansas, which is massive, but can you string together some wins, or are you gonna fall back? And this is one where, I mean, I see the momentum going into Big East play is always so crucial. And this is one for Creighton. You can be absolutely on top of the world with momentum. When you beat Kansas, you beat Alabama, now you're going into Big East play. Whereas if you lose this game, you still have to make those adjustments going into it. So that's a huge game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that, like Creighton, you get a massive win at home. Back-to-back years, you've beaten the number 1 overall team in your gym.
Mhm.
But the real question is, how are they gonna respond now that they've lost their second leading scorer in Pop Isaacs for the year to a hip
Yep.
injury? How are you gonna respond now that you only have Kalkbrenner as your main go-to guy and a point guard in Stephen Ashworth, who is a, veteran guy, but he's not a person who can go out and get a bucket whenever he feels like.
Mhm.
So that's the real question, especially going to play Bama. This team's hungry. This team is playing fantastic basketball. And, Nate Oates has his club not scared to play anybody. And I respect him for the non conference he's putting together here. I think this could be a game that almost assures Alabama as a top 5 team the whole year and really leapfrogs them into SEC play.
Yeah, I think this could be a game where in which Creighton really struggles, right? I think, are you able to win with Pop Isaacs? I think yes, but maybe not right away because you have to figure out how to play without him, right?
Yep.
How does Stephen Ashworth, how many shots are you taking a game? Are you taking all
Mhm.
of Pop Isaacs? How are you taking half? Are we going in Kalkbrenner way more? I mean, I just think there's a lot of moving pieces that you got to figure out. I wouldn't be surprised if this game here, if Bama wins by 20, in all
Yeah.
honesty, just because I think this is kind of lining up of a game where, like you said, Bama's hungry. They're coming off a win against North Carolina. They're flying high right now. They
Yep.
are feeling good. Creighton has a lot of moving pieces. I think this is one where if Bama smells blood in the water, which I think they will early, I could see them being up by 15 or 20 at half.
Yeah. I could easily see this being just like the Carolina game. This is a team in Bama who is really playing inspired basketball.
Mhm.
And the thing I love about Bama is they're not scared. Like you watch them play, they're not afraid to take shots, drive to the rim. They're not afraid to get in your face and play some tough defense. They're not afraid to get out and run. They're not scared to turn the ball over. And if they do, it's instantly right out the other side. They don't care. They don't care. It's for them. It's the next play. They don't worry and dwell on the past. And I think that's one thing with Nate Oates. It really shows how good of a coach he is that he's able to plug and play these guys no matter where he gets them from, whether it's recruiting or in the transfer portal, and they will play so well together as a unit.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. I'm very high on Nate Oates in this Bama team yet again this year. The other game really quickly, the final game we'll talk about here is this Yukon and Gonzaga game, and I
Yep.
want to touch on this because Yukon's, I mean, coming off the win against Texas, right? Great win. I mean, it's not an easy game. I know Texas this year has not looked absolutely spectacular, but that's not an easy win.
Yeah.
So that's a good win for Dan Hurley and the boys there over in Yukon. And then Gonzaga, you've lost 2 of your last 4, right? Lost to West Virginia, you go back, beat Indiana. That's a good bounce back. And then you come in, we were just talking about it, right? You lose to Kentucky in a game in which you're up by what? 17,
Favored
20
by
at half?
favored by 7 points too, and then like you said, up by 15, 16 at half.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a massive game. Bounce back potential for Gonzaga. Also, what we were just saying about Creighton, same situation for UConn. Can you build some momentum? Because this Marquette team looks good. And
Yeah,
for
yeah.
UConn, you're going to need some momentum going into this Big East play to repeat as Big East champs yet again and get, I mean, they're hoping for a number 1, number 2 seed in the tournament again.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaways for this Gonzaga UConn game is really how is Hassan Diarra and Aiden Mahaney going to do against one of the best point guards in the nation in Ryan Nembhard. I
Mhm.
mean, you look back at yesterday in the Texas game. I mean, there was only one person off the bench who played more than 15 minutes or more than 10 minutes. Sorry, it was Terrace Reed.
Terrace Reed,
Nobody
yeah.
else, nobody else played over 10 minutes. I mean, Mahaney only played 7 minutes in a game that they were up by 10, 12 plus the whole game.
Mhm.
And once again, Samson Johnson fouled out. How is he going to go against one of the best bigs, one of the most experienced bigs in Graham Ike? There's so many different moving parts to this and so many question marks for this UConn team. It's going to be interesting to see if they can carry over that momentum from a big Texas win and really go up against a Gonzaga team, which I still believe is at least Elite Eight to Final Four good.
Yes, I mean, this Gonzaga team's great. They have that elite guard play like we talked about with Ryan Nembhard, but I'm with you. This is a either fall on your face or build some big momentum.
Yep.
opportunity for Yukon going into Big East play. So a lot of things to watch for this week. I know it's finals week, so the actual week itself is typically really, really
Yeah.
dry.
Like there's only 3 games on tonight.
Yeah, I think it's this entire week is really, really dry
Yep.
because all of the players are finishing up finals. Come Saturday, they're like, all right, you're done. You're playing a
Yep.
big game. Everybody is. So ton to watch for this weekend. It's going to be absolutely great. Also, college football playoff bracket just came out. We'll be touching on that soon here because holy smokes, there are some really good matchups. Ohio State,
Yeah.
Tennessee is going to be a doozy. Notre Dame, Indiana is going to be an absolute doozy. Little in-state rivalry there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there's going to be some great games, but we'll be touching on that here soon. Other than that, though, we have weekly college basketball just chats just like this coming out every single week here on YouTube. So other than that, though, this has been the Sports Geeks podcast. They play, we talk. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.
Won't go. Rebound box. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer.